Welcome back to another edition of Force Friday, where we talk about Star Wars theories, characters, concepts, comparisons, analyzations, collectibles, and more. And today we're going to talk about the Trevorrow script and plan for Episode 9, which was going to be called Duel of the Fates. I'm not going to bore you with too much back history on it, but basically Colin Trevorrow of Jurassic World fame, which is trash by the way, was initially announced as the director for Episode 9. He wrote a script for it with frequent collaborator Derek Conley. And due to quote-unquote creative differences, which in Hollywood usually means being fired, his exit was announced in September 2017. J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio rewrote the story of Episode 9 from the ground up, and nothing was taken from Trevorrow's various drafts, with the only similarities being red troopers, force draining, and the entire galaxy uniting. But the entire galaxy uniting probably would have happened either way. It's kind of the common sense way to approach the finale of the saga, I suppose. Shortly after the release of Rise of Skywalker, rumors began circulating of the Trevorrow story. Soon after, an unknown person leaked the entire script and multiple pieces of concept art online. Trevorrow verified both as entirely real. So let's go through the plot ever so quickly. There's a ton of videos that have done this already available to you on YouTube, but in order for me to give my opinion, I feel like I have to go through it just in case you may not have watched any of those prior videos. The film begins 5 years after The Last Jedi. The galaxy are entirely dominated by the First Order, who are superficially ruled by the self-proclaimed Chancellor Hux. They've entirely cut communications off of any kind between systems. The First Order are clawing for power's sake. The Resistance is all but completely gone. Rey has spent years training for the battle to come, while Supreme Leader Kylo Ren has been largely missing in action, with his whereabouts unknown even to the First Order. The Knights of Ren ensure loyalty to him in his absence. Rey has become powerful but frustrated with the weight and duty put upon her. She feels for Kylo and sees the old Jedi of the prequels as dogmatic, lazy, and inhuman, a direct pull from themes touched on both in the Clone Wars and The Last Jedi, which I'm 100% in agreement with, and many people have been asking me about my feelings on the Jedi since I've been mentioning them in the Ahsoka reviews. That ties into it. We will cover that eventually. Kylo is as conflicted as ever, haunted by Luke, who is determined to sway him from the darkness and give Leia her son back. He desperately searches for greater power and has become obsessed with the mythical planet of Mortis from the Clone Wars. But he believes Mortis can finally purge the light from his soul and allow him to become the monster he thinks he is. The film opens with an action scene as Finn, Poe, Rose, and Rey steal a massive Eclipse Star Destroyer that contains an armada of walkers, fighters, and weapons, and now they just need an army to wield them. With the galaxy entirely under forced blackout, Rey remembers an ancient Jedi communication system buried deep beneath the Coruscant Jedi Temple. This force beacon can send a message across the galaxy. The group soon splits in half. Finn, Rose, R2, and 3PO head to Coruscant to light the beacon and rally the galaxy, while Rey, Chewie, Poe, and BB-8 take the Falcon to find Mortis at Luke's request. Coruscant has become the First Order's homeworld, but has fallen into decay and poverty, becoming a crumbling and discarded wasteland. The First Order rule from floating citadels overhead, and the theme of them being no empire is repeatedly being ran home, with Hux being the prime example. We also learned that the destroyed remains of the empire were supplied with funds by various power-hungry monarchs and titans from across the galaxy who were promised power through a reborn empire. They're a group of grotesque, hideous aliens from various worlds who dine while the people of Coruscant starve. An implication seems to be that Snoke was no more than a force-sensitive, power-hungry member of this group, and that sort of disparity ties back to what we see in terms of distribution of wealth in The Last Jedi as well. Kylo has been searching for the remains of Vader's castle and learns from a holocron left by the Emperor of an ancient Sith scholar named Tor Valum. He learns Valim's location, but is brutally wounded by the holocron when it senses the light inside him. He is rescued and returned to Coruscant, where he chastises Hux and the small-mindedness of his Empire-obsessed followers and destroys Vader's helmet, vowing to move beyond him in his redemption. He leaves for Remicor, the hidden location of the Sith scholar. Meanwhile, Finn and Rose pass through the Coruscant underworld and infiltrate the crumbling remains of the Jedi Temple at nightfall. They unearth the beacon, an ancient, delicate system hidden beneath the council chamber in the topmost tower, and begin setting it up. Rey and Poe arrive on a beautiful water world, a world where Poe used to live. They seek a sort of force psychic or gypsy who can help Rey understand the Jedi text and find Mortis. Rose is captured by the First Order and tortured while Finn and the droids flee. Separated, Finn talks down pursuing First Order trooper, telling him he had a choice and is saved by an underground peasant group who resists the First Order. Finn and this peasant group are rounded up and placed in a work camp where they are brutally used as slaves while Rose continues to resist and mock Hux. While with the gypsy's guidance, Rey is given a vision of Mortis and its location, but also sees her parents,
She's forced to flee as the First Order arrives, led by the Knights of Ren. Rey battles the Knights and manages to defeat them, but Poe is wounded. Not wanting to lose anyone else, she mind tricks him and Chewie into leaving on the Falcon, and heartbroken, she leaves for Mortis alone, knowing she must face Kylo. Kylo arrives on Rimacor and finds Tor Valum, an ancient, quirky, sinister alien creature described as Lovecraftian. Bemused by Kylo, he offers to teach him the power of life and death and eventually points him towards Mortis. But he chastises Kylo for being no Sith and mocks the light in his heart. He teaches Kylo of the living force and how one can drain its energy to prolong their life, and promises to teach Kylo if he faces his heart. Kylo goes into a dark chasm, not unlike Luke before him, and faces a vision of Darth Vader, not unlike Luke before him, who brutally beats him and stabs him through the chest, different than Luke before him. Thrown from the chasm, he angrily demands Valum give him Mortis, and in doing so gives into the darkness and brutally drains Valum's essence and leaves his skeletal husk. He leaves for Mortis. Desperate for allies, Leia visits Lando, who runs a small cabaret club. He is elated to see her, but refuses to help. He says they already fought one war, and it was all for nothing. And then we enter the third act, where Finn organizes an uprising in the slave camp and steals an AT-AT, battling a First Order mech trooper atop it as it stomps through the Coruscant streets. Surrounded by troops, Finn reminds them of their humanity and tells them they have a choice. The stormtroopers defect en masse, marking their armor and rampaging towards the First Order's floating citadel, led by Finn and the peasants. He needs to rescue Rose and activate the beacon. Leia and a small resistance staff arrive on the Eclipse over Coruscant. Leia refuses to believe Finn and Rose won't come through and desperately tries to hold out as they battle the First Order fleet. They just need to last long enough for them to activate the beacon and send her message. Poe and a crew man the Falcon while Chewie flies an X-Wing. The Battle of Coruscant begins. Meanwhile, Rey and Kylo arrive on Mortis. Kylo is shown his childhood home and comes face to face with his father, while Rey sees her parents sending her away and sees their final moments in a stormy, rain-filled village. They both ascend to the Mortis Temple. Rey is shocked by Kylo's darkness and he tells her the truth. He killed her parents. Snoke had him eliminate any Force sensitives they found to ensure their own power. He knows her true name and first recognized her during the interrogation in The Force Awakens. They race to the top, battling fiercely. The beacon is fully activated. Leia's message of hope is sent. Chewie crashes on the ground as the battle turns against Finn and the rebelling stormtroopers and citizens. R2 is blown apart. 3PO desperately races to save him, sitting sadly over his dead husk. And the First Order citadels begin to leave Coruscant. That's when the massive fleet arrives, led by Lando Calrissian. The citizens of the galaxy have rallied to defeat the evil once and for all. Defeated, Hux takes his own life rather than lose power. Rey and Kylo reach the temple's peak. Kylo tells Rey he could have been her teacher and ended her pain, forgetting the legacy of the Sith and Jedi. His eyes become Sith red. He brutally blinds her, mortally wounding her and sending her tumbling down the temple stairway. He enters the throne room. Lying in the snow, a bleeding, dying Rey hears the voice of Luke Skywalker. He tells her of her strength, her endurance, how the Jedi must not die. Kylo enters the Grand Chamber. Luke begs him one last time, but Kylo's too far gone. He swings his saber at Luke, who catches the blade, more powerful than Kylo could possibly imagine. Rey desperately climbs the steps, but her body is bloody and broken. She proclaims that she will not deny her anger or her love. She is a Jedi, but what a Jedi should be. Blindfolding her eyes, filled with the power of the Force, Kylo realizes the power of Mortis cannot be taken or possessed. She beats him. Kylo loses his ish. He roars, tearing her from the ground, begins to drain her life force. As Rey's floating, dying, with Kylo growing more powerful and darker than Anakin ever was, Leia senses him through the Force. She forgives him. She loves him. He will always be her son. Rey stretches out her hand like he did to her in The Last Jedi, and he takes it. The power he took disappears, and he and Rey collapse, dying in the winter's night. As he dies, his last words are Rey's last name, Solana. The darkness fades, and he dies not as Kylo Ren, but as Ben Solo. Her work done, Rey's body gives out. She senses the victory of her friends and knows the galaxy is saved. She allows herself to die. She appears healed in a realm of white, where she is greeted by Luke Skywalker, Yoda, and Obi-Wan. They tell her she understood what the Jedi of old never did, that emotion is a natural part of life and the Force and the source of their strength. Finally, they say her suffering is over and she can become one with the Force. She asks about her friends. She wants to see them again, but has to make a choice: to ascend or to stick it out. The film cuts away and we do not see her choose, and closes in a Return of the King style epilogue. We see R2 repaired to the delight of 3PO and Leia, but his memory is finally fixed, and through his projector we see images of Qui-Gon, Anakin, Padme, Luke, Leia, Han. Everybody's rejoicing, big party. Finn and Rose begin a small school on a remote grassy planet for Force-sensitive children. Broom Boy is among them. As the film closes, Finn finally accepting his friend is gone, Rey appears outside his safe haven. She's chosen life and to remain with her friends. Her eyes are restored. She walks towards the running children in BB-8. Galaxy finally at peace and true Jedi restored. And it should be noted that they didn't know how to deal with the passing of Leia. That wasn't part of the script. And now let me give you my 2 cents on it. I think it's good. I think that story-wise, it's probably better than what we got. I think that ultimately it doesn't solve the problems that I think 9 specifically creates. It's hard to close, dude. It's hard to close. Very few do it successfully. Let me tell you what I like. I like that the stormtroopers kind of get redeemed. That, they start as clones with the Jedi, they go through their history, and then they end on a positive note, revolting against their leaders. I dig it. I like that Finn causes it. I think that's a nice additional arc for his character. I like that Rose was more utilized. I always found it silly that episode 9 replaced Finn's female friend who could hack First Order tech and ride space horses for a new female friend who could hack First Order tech and ride space horses. I like that it doesn't introduce a plethora of new characters that you have to learn about. But what I think it ultimately still falls short of is understanding that Star Wars is about family. The Skywalker saga is about family, and they don't do enough here to ground that for the sequel trilogy. And they could have. There was tons of ingredients peppered throughout for the right cook to come along and continue it. I know that a lot of people don't care for this trilogy, especially in a particular age demographic. I'm not one of those people. I like 7, I love 8, and 9 is a huge disappointment for me. I do ultimately think this is better, but have to be honest and say that I don't think either of them would have gotten it quite right. And while 9 relies too heavy on the original trilogy, I kind of feel like this one relies too heavily on the prequel trilogy. And what it needed to do was rely upon itself. We will be looking at the George Lucas version here soon as well, which I have even more complicated feelings on. But it's not as detailed in its layout, so hopefully we don't have to waste as much time telling the story. Hope you guys are staying safe. Hope you guys are staying sane. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.